Welcome to Hoyt's Bowhunting Whitetails. We're still about 2 weeks away from the start of hunting here. We open on October 1, and I don't know if we'll hunt immediately. It really is going to depend upon the weather and the wind and how many mosquitoes we have to fight and that sort of thing. But we're starting to close in on the time when we start hunting. We've been talking about some of the planning that we've got in place, getting ready for the opener. But in the meantime, I've been telling a few stories. Stories about bucks that I've hunted over the years and just some of the unique traits and behavior of some of those deer. So I want to continue that. In this episode, I want to talk about a buck that started out as an 8-pointer, kind of a generic looking 8-pointer. Maybe one that you'd look at if you were thinking, what deer's got potential, and you might have written this deer off. Hoyt's Bowhunting Whitetails is brought to you by Redneck Blinds, Code of Silence Apparel, Hunt Stand Pro Whitetail App, Whitetail Institute, Research Equals Results, B3 Releases, XO Broadheads, Exact Sights, and Hoyt. 2008. I think he was probably, I'm going to say he was probably four years old. That was the first year I had any, encounter with this deer. We filmed him during the summer, and I've lost that footage, but I do have one photo of him here that we pulled from the videos. So you can see what he looked like. That was 2008. And then in 2009, he showed up in late November as a way bigger deer, and we tracked him back looking at antler shape and a few other characteristics about the buck, back to the same deer that I showed you from 2008. So he made a big jump. Even as an 8-pointer, he became a much bigger 8-pointer. This was one of my early introductions to string jumping. I was really excited watching this deer coming in, and worked a scrape right in front of the stand, and I stopped him after he worked the scrape. I should have just shot him, and maybe there wasn't a shooting lane. I can't remember. I don't know why I didn't shoot him at the scrape, but once he started moving, then I stopped him, and then he was on alert. And I didn't make the world's greatest shot to begin with, but he also moved quite a bit, and I hit him high and forward. And he ran off. I found a few drops of blood, but almost nothing. And then he came back out again late that fall into the early winter in a area very close by. And I thought we had a chance at him that day too. He was feeding out into a little small food plot, and the deer were moving in my direction, our direction. And then some coyotes came out nearby, and the deer all ran off. So that was my last encounter with that buck with a bow in my hand, unfortunately. And then, as the years went by, I continued to keep tabs on this deer through trail camera pictures and shed antlers. So I'm trying to think of the years now as we're going through this. One thing that was interesting about this deer that was maybe unique compared to some of the other ones that I had experience with on the farm, he had a really large range. Even as he got older, he covered a lot of ground. So I'd get, maybe a few trail camera pictures of him here and there, and then the neighbors had pictures of him, and the neighbors had pictures of him, and so he was covering a lot of ground even as an older, more mature buck. So my hopes of killing him were actually pretty slim. He just wasn't spending very much time on the farm. So finally, by the time he reached, I think, 8 years old, which would have been 2012, his range was starting to really narrow down, and he went from being an 8-pointer up until then to kind of blowing up and adding all these extra points. And he was a way different buck. So his behavior changed. The size of his range changed, and I even think his core area changed, because I was getting pictures of him pretty consistently. So I think he was now living most of the time on my farm. And I was pretty excited about it because I thought, finally, I've got a chance where I can kill this deer. He's starting to show maybe some behavior that, makes him killable. He's living more or less on my farm, and he's showing up on a couple cameras pretty consistently. I think when the season comes, I'm going to get some daylight activity out of him sometime probably into October, and I'm going to have a chance. Well, as luck would have it, he dropped off the cameras in late September, and I went on to hunt other bucks, kind of ignored him, tried to, check the cameras once in a while. And I thought, finally, after I killed one in early November, a buck I'd been hunting for a long time. And I thought, well, I need to find out what happened to this buck, because if he's still alive, I'm going to start hunting him. But if EHD got him, and there was a lot of EHD in 2012, then I'm not going to hunt this deer, obviously. I'm not going to waste my time trying to hunt a deer that's already dead. So I made a little tour of the farm early in November, after I killed that other buck, and found a number of dead deer in the creeks. And then finally, unfortunately, I found him laying dead. I at least got the deer. I called the game warden, and he gave me a salvage tag for him. So I got to keep the deer, and I mounted him, and he looks awesome. He went from being, let's say, a generic 8-pointer, as what I think was a 4-year-old, to being a high-scoring 200-plus inch. Believe it or not, when he died at his oldest age, like I said, I think he was 8, he kept growing, and really it kind of exploded at the end. And he was over 200 inches as a mainframe 8-pointer. So I think maybe the big takeaway on this deer, other than just being a fun look back on a really cool buck, is the fact that their behavior is unique. Every buck is a little bit different. You can't ever say always or never when you're dealing with whitetails, because I always felt like, they all kind of close in as they get older. Their ranges get smaller. They start to really narrow down where they live. But this deer didn't do that. He kept a big range, and he was a roamer. And everybody always thinks that they hit a certain age and then their antlers start going downhill. Well, I think a lot of them do, but not all of them. And he's a classic example, and I've got a couple others I can show you too. In fact, just for fun, I'm going to show you a trail camera picture of a buck from, I can't remember what year it was, 2008 or 2009. And I'd been hunting the farm long before I started running trail cameras on there. And there was a deer that every year I'd see him. Sometimes I'd pass him up. One year he had a part of his antler was broke off, but he was a generic, again, just average kind of deer, nice buck, nothing too spectacular, maybe 150-inch 10-pointer forever, year after year. And then finally, he made this huge jump, and he was just this big monstrous deer. And, I don't know why they do that. It seems like they do it right before they die, because he died that following winter. I had him at close range a couple of times, but didn't shoot him because he broke off part of his rack. And you can see that, in these images. But so there was another one that really made a huge jump right before he died. And I guess it's characteristic of some of these bucks, but those are the fascinating things about hunting whitetails that we run into along the way. They're so unique. Every buck is different. And I realized that if you're not hunting mature bucks, it's a little bit different because you don't get to follow them from year to year. And I really feel like, I really wish that everybody had that opportunity. I know in some states it's really tough because the hunting pressure is so high. But little by little, I hear people say that it's changing. Pennsylvania, Michigan, Wisconsin, little by little, the hunting practices are starting to change, and there's more mature deer showing up. So hopefully over time, you're going to be able to see more of this yourself. If you hunt states that don't have real high pressure, where you've got bucks reaching maturity, I'm sure you're seeing it now. So again, I just find it super fascinating. Everything about these deer is so interesting. So hopefully you've enjoyed this. just remember, every buck is different. You can't ever hunt them all the same. You can't say they always do this or they never do that, because the next one is going to prove you wrong. Well, I appreciate you joining me. I'll see you right back here again soon for the next episode of Hoyt's Bowhunting Whitetails. And remember to always dream big.